Welcome to another edition of the Quick Bite Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Klinger. Today, I've got a special guest on, Erin. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Erin, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Well, I've spent 20 some years in the restaurant hospitality retail space, been a serial CMO and marketing technology leader. And now I'm a consultant for various different brands and companies.
Wow. And tell me about, I hear rumor that you're part of a new podcast that has launched. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So Chrissy, Tammy, Billings, and myself launched Bite Sized and Bossy. So we kept with the bite like you. And it is one of the only female hosted podcasts in our space in restaurant and hospitality. And one of the things is we were just sitting around one day talking about it because I've gone on various podcasts, but I said, I've never had a female host. I've never been on a podcast where a female has hosted it. And we started talking about why is that? And we asked a few people and they said they don't want to, or they don't raise their hand enough. And it just hasn't happened or for various reasons. And so we said, well, let's solve that. Let's really bring female voices to the top and be told by a female hosted podcast.
I love that. So female hosted, what are some of the topics that you plan to dive into? Is there anything specific that y'all are really passionate about or kind of tell me more about that?
So obviously women in leadership. And while it is getting better than it was, right? So when I first joined the restaurant industry, I think I showed up at a restaurant leadership conference and I was one of very few women there. Now we are seeing more and more women move up and begin to become leaders, to get those promotions. In fact, we're seeing more female CEOs than we have before, but there's still a discrepancy there. And figuring out why that discrepancy exists. Is it because they don't want the role? Is it because they couldn't get the role? Is it because they don't have the right training? What is that reason? So we have a lot of conversations around that, as well as just how do you manage it? Because what has happened through history is the female was traditionally, right? Like Leave It to Beaver, 1950s. The female was the caretaker of the home. They did the child rearing. They did all this. None of that has really changed. The female is still usually the one that the schools call first. They just do. And we're trying to help figure out how you navigate that. Because what we're seeing is as women get to, well, my age, they start to hit a burnout. And they go, I'm tired. I can't do everything and be everything to everyone. So having conversations about how do you management? What does that tribe look like? It used to be one woman at a table. And so you had to actually be competitive with other women because there was only one seat at the table when you actually got a seat. Now we make a bigger table and everybody gets a seat. And so how do we keep that conversation going and then bring along our male allies who also want to help with this? Because it's not just females. There are plenty of men out there that want to help lift this conversation up as well.
We are all better together. With that said, Erin, we've got 10 questions for you. Let's get rolling. Number one, what's the best piece of business advice that Erin has ever received?
So when I first started out in Las Vegas, I spent 10 years in casinos and I was the only female executive at the table. And the general counsel who didn't sit at the executive table, but was also a female, pulled me aside one day and she said, I want to tell you something. People are going to call you a bitch. People are going to say bad things about you as you continue to grow in your career. Don't change anything. You are strong, you are determined, and you are doing the right thing. And it was because I was a female leader and people wanted me to, quote unquote, know my place. But it was the best advice I ever got was to continue to not to change and to ignore the haters.
Absolutely. Ignore the haters. Someone told me once that the higher up the flagpole you go, the bigger your butt becomes a target. And I have found that to be true, but that's okay. It just comes with the territory. I kind of wear it as a badge of honor that if there's some people out there knocking you, they probably want to beat you. So just keep going. What are some of the qualities that every leader should have? Do you have maybe 2 or 3 that you really hold on to? If you were going to, find that great leader, what do you typically see both in yourself and in others that you admire as a leader?
Well, perseverance for sure. And then I put together kindness or caring with passion, right? Kindness, caring, passion, kind of all bucket under the same thing. And then lifting others up.
You've had a great career. Take me on that journey of how did you get into being a marketing executive?
So how I got into it was accidentally. I lost my job as a training talent development person in Las Vegas during the recession, when everybody was getting laid off. And I worked for Caesars Corporate at the time. And Caesars Recruitment came to me and said, what do you want to do? We are hiring a few jobs. And I was like, I'll be a housekeeper. And they said, okay, well, what do you know about internet marketing? And I was like, I have the Facebook, because at that point it was the Facebook. And they let me start at the bottom and I worked my way up. And that's what I think is key to leadership is when you find those leaders who just were plugged into a leadership role and they never worked as the figurative dishwasher or did the line level jobs, it's hard to have an appreciation. You also don't understand what it takes to do those jobs, right? I've cleaned hotel rooms. It is horrible. I don't want to do that job, but I've done it because you need to have an appreciation for those jobs. So I worked my way up. I went over to MGM Resorts and worked my way up there, and then eventually was promoted to what would have been considered like the CMO at Palms, and then decided I didn't want to raise my kids in Vegas. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but got recruited by Wingstop, moved to Dallas, then recruited to be the CMO of Freebirds World Burrito, moved to Austin, loved it. Then went to Hathaway, which is now Bounteous, a MarTech agency. And each time I went into one of these roles, it was about who is my team? Who do I connect with? And then what great stuff are we going to do together? And there's this difference between walking alongside someone versus me pushing on someone. I'm not there to push you. I'm there to walk alongside you. And that to me is how you become a leader. And so anyone can be a leader. Any person out there, I don't care what your job is. If you say, I want to be a leader, it's who can you help? And that's what my job as a leader is just to help others lift them up. Because if I did all the work as the leader, I'm only one person. But if I can help lift everybody else up to do their job, then it's great. So I went from Hathaway Bounteous, I was promoted to the CMO and moved us to Wisconsin at Marcus Hotels and Resorts, a 21 hotel and resort company, one of the larger theater companies. And then went to Del Taco where I led marketing technology, then Jack in the Box, and then was the CMO most recently of Museum of Ice Cream, and now consulting because now I get to help lots of different people. And again, any leader out there, you just say, that's what I want to do. And you decide what those core values are to you, and then you lift others up around you.
And Erin, it sounds like it took immense faith in yourself because you've moved from place to place and city to city and you climbed those ladders, you took those opportunities. A good friend of ours, Helen Lau, said, talked about betting on yourself. If you believe in yourself, then bet on yourself. She mentions that in another podcast recording we did recently. And it sounds like in your journey, it required, faith in yourself. Tell me how faith has played a role in your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I believe in there's no point in not leaping, right? Because then I have regret of what if I leapt? And there have been a couple times in my career where I didn't take the leap. And then I was like, I don't know if I made the right decision. But when all the things fall into place, you just know. And so I do have a huge faith background. I believe that everything does happen for a reason, even when it sucks, because it's the only way that I survive. And it is challenging because you don't usually see it when it's happening. But if you can, and it's a learning mechanism to remind yourself, all right, there's a reason this is happening. What is this doing? What is it trying me for? What is it challenging me for? Then it's better. And again, doesn't stop maybe the kicking and screaming that comes along with that stuff, but having that faith is what drives me through and being able to leap and go, all right, this might not be perfect, but let's see. And I've gotten really good at buying and selling houses, which has been wonderful and also horrible because that whole process is broken. But it's been interesting. And it turns out the material things come and go. It's really about the people around you.
Who has had the greatest impact on you professionally and why?
Oh, man. So a lot of my employees actually have impacted me the most professionally because sometimes, and I liken it to being a parent, that I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I don't know. Maybe. But occasionally you see this light come through or you see the glow come through and you go, oh, I'm doing a good job. I did the right thing. They might not be happy with me in the moment, but boy, they were happy in the long run. And my employees, a lot of them have been really impactful for me where you hope you're being the best leader that you can be and investing in them. And you don't know what it'll mean until they turn around and come back to you and they go, you're the best leader I've ever had. And some of them have had to go to the other side of the grass to see that. But that was really impactful. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Bobby Shaw. He wrote a leadership book called Cutting Onions for Restaurants. He is now at Big Chicken and he hired me. He was the CEO at Freebirds and hired me to be the CMO. And he really believes in strengths-based coaching. And it's the first time I had interacted with a Gallup Strength Finder and really understood what strength coaching is. And I liken that to Michael Jordan has this natural talent, right? He had a natural talent to be a basketball player, but he had to cultivate that skill so that he could be what some consider the world's best. I don't know, and I'm not here to debate that, but he's very good at basketball. But that same gentleman, Michael Jordan, went and played baseball And even though he had all the money in the world to make him a great baseball player, he still wasn't the best baseball player because he didn't have that natural innate ability for baseball. He had it for basketball. And so if we take people's strengths and cultivate them, they can be rock stars. But if you take their weaknesses and go, I need you to improve on that, you might never get where you need to go and you won't be fulfilled doing it.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy with Michael Jordan. By the way, I am one of those in the camp that I believe that Michael Jordan is the GOAT. I do believe he is the greatest of all time. And I grew up a big Chicago Bulls fan. He really did set that bar in basketball. But to your point, when he tried baseball, he had a couple of big hits and it just really didn't work out for him. And he tried. And, I credit him trying to get that journey off the ground. But to your point, if it's just not a fit, it's not a fit. One thing that my son, who's a soccer player, now he's going off to college to play college soccer, he heard, throughout his journey as an athlete, you don't have to be great at everything. You just have to be great at one thing. There's got to be something really special to get recruited to play college soccer. There's something that's got to be a standout that you do, some standout talent that you have. And he found that at a young age and then cultivated it. And it's to his credit, what I believe was a big factor in him being recruited. So I think that's a great point. I'm going to have to check that book out. Thank you for sharing that. So when it comes to companies that you admire, I mean, there's a lot of great ones out there. It's probably hard to pick just one, but who's one that really stands out to you and why?
Um, there's so many companies that are doing great work. In the restaurant space, I recently heard the uh, women from that founded Saigon Hustle restaurant speak, and they were very motivational to listen to, and their passion, their drive, how they believe they're going to grow, unbelievable. Another one I really have enjoyed uh, is Batch and Box Cookies, gourmet cookies. They believe in sustainability and cultivating the right things to put in our body, even though they're cookies, right? It's about where are the ingredients coming from. And it's actually very fascinating to learn about where chocolate really comes from and all these things that go into your cookies. But they really do a good job and able to ship nationwide, which is unbelievable.
Tell me about a time where you went through some real adversity and what you
Yeah.
learned from it.
So you had sent me this question ahead of time, and I actually had to go Google the term adversity because I was like, do I actually know the true definition of it? And it means difficult times or misfortune. And I sat with it for a while, and I will tell you, it's actually in my personal life, which turns out I believe that everything in your life is a blend. You don't just leave your personal life at the door when you walk into work. And um, 2 years ago, my husband had a cardiac event, fell over a banister, dropped 12 feet, broke 14 bones, well, 16 bones, 14 ribs, temporal bone, collarbone, had a brain bleed, traumatic brain injury, and then coded 4 times. And so I will tell you, being called into the trauma room, which was exactly like Grey's Anatomy, like completely clean and metal. And he's laying on a table, bleeding out of everywhere. And there's a machine on his chest. And they said that machine is keeping him alive. You need to say goodbye. And if you've never had to say goodbye to someone, I don't care who it is, let alone a spouse or a child, uh, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know the emotions that are going to come out. I had anger, I had sadness, I was yelling, there was a cry I've never cried before and haven't cried since that just seemed like it came from my toes all the way through me. And I said goodbye. And then I looked at the doctor and he looked at the clock and they still have the old hand seconds clocks on the wall, like from when you were in grade school. And he goes, time of death. And then he moved his hand. And I said, he moved his hand. And nobody was touching him. And all of a sudden, everybody went back to touching him. And the neurosurgeon comes over and he goes, this doesn't change anything, but I would like to do a CT scan quickly. And I said, okay. And so they did it. I think I laid on the floor and just was in shock. And they picked me up and took me down a very long hallway. And the neurosurgeon says, so in a traditional sense, we would go in and immediately do brain surgery, but he will die on the table since he's coded 4 times. If we don't do brain surgery, he will die within 4 hours. And I didn't know what to do. And I sat there and they said, but it's your call. And I said, what are the odds? And they said, I can't tell you that. I said, what's the percentage? Can't tell you that. What would you do if this was your wife? I can't tell you that. I said, okay. So I sat there for a while. He came in and he said, we have to get the OR ready if you want to move on this. And I said, okay, let's do it. And then I sat a little bit longer. And then I said, no, let's not do it. Because he would be pissed. I already kept him alive this long. Let him die in peace. And so I sat with him, waiting for him to die. And he didn't. And the next day they said, today's going to be the day. And I said, okay. And he didn't. And I sat there and people would drop me off food or clothes or come in and visit him to say their goodbyes. Everybody had said their goodbyes to him. And then he kept living. And people would go, he's going to pass away. And I said, okay, no, he's not. No, he's not. And call it blind faith, call it naivety, call it shock. But I truly believed that we were there to be there. And I didn't leave the site until the doctors forced me to go home to sleep. And then I had a sign up sheet because I believe no one dies alone. I don't care who they are. So people would rotate through. And then infectious disease doctor comes in. He goes, he has an infectious disease. He somehow got here from Iraq. What? He's never been there. How'd he get it? I don't know. We haven't seen it in this hospital in 25 years. Okay. His lungs collapsed. We have to put him in a paralyzed coma. They had to drill a hole in his head. Like it was just one thing after another, but he kept going. He would spike fevers. He would, they had to bag him. I didn't even know what bag him meant when they say it on TV shows, but it's like when you have to do the hand bent and like you just sit there and you watch. And I just guarded over him until they finally said he's going to wake up, but he's not going to be the man you knew. And so when he first woke up, he thought I was his grandmother. And I thought, oh man. And people are like, aren't you so happy he's awake? And I said, I don't know. He doesn't, if you have to live a life where you don't know anyone anymore, what is that life? And he slowly regained his memory. And after 3 months, on December 22nd, 2 years ago, he came home and he taught himself to walk again, to do everything again. They took out the trach. He went through rehabilitation. He still has a traumatic brain injury. He still has side effects. But they call him, like the neurosurgeon said, we don't say miracle, but you're a miracle. You should not have survived. You shouldn't have. And you're a less than 1%er. And so to say that that was adversity or misfortune or difficult times is an understatement, probably. I wish it on no one. But I will tell you, it's taught me more about how you show up for people, how people show up for you, how you handle things. And I still go through. I mean, there's a lot of therapists that help me through this. And trauma healing, having my kids in trauma therapy, because it brings out so many emotions you didn't know were even possible to have.
What a powerful story, Erin, and thank you for sharing that. And I do believe your husband is a miracle. I do believe that God has a purpose for him. When someone survives something like that, especially when everyone, the doctors, the experts, the physicians say it's over. We can't give you any type of hope. And yet he still survives.
When you come out of trauma and realizing that it's natural to have these emotions and to go through anger and sadness and happiness and learning about yin and yang and the fact that you can't have light without darkness. You can't. Martin Luther King says a whole quote on it. Like you can be the light in the darkness, but no one sees the light if it's all light. And so we have to have sad times. That's how we get to have more joyful times.
That's right. It rains on the just and the unjust, and without the rain, you can't produce flowers. And now through that journey that you've been on with your husband, you're able to help, encourage others through that. So thank you so much for sharing that, Erin. On a lighter note, switching gears, tell me a little fun fact about you that a lot of people don't know about Erin.
Well, I'm a competitive ballroom dancer, so I travel throughout the U.S. and overseas to compete in ballroom dance with Fred Astaire, and have been doing it for 4 years. I fell in love with it, continue to grow, and it's a lot of fun. And you want to talk about adversity? Like we were performing in front of tons of people last year, and I do this trick where I go upside down and my partner's holding me upside down, and I could feel us slipping and down we go. And so in front of tons of people, just fall almost on my head. And probably if someone said, what's your most embarrassing moment? It would have been that. But it honestly wasn't anymore now that I think about it. One, I wiped myself off. I had my moment, and then I turned around and got back out there and performed again. And that's true leadership, is you're going to fail. How do you get back up? How do you get back out there is really what it's about. And as hard as it was, because I was the one going through it and I wasn't just telling someone else to get back up, I did it. I got back up. I changed my outfit. I got back on the floor. And it was the perseverance versus I could have stayed down.
One thing I've taken from this podcast is you are resilient. And you are a rock, and I'm glad I have you in my corner personally. I think it's great that we've been able to connect and become friends. And, I am so thankful to have strong people in my life, and you are definitely at the top of the list with resiliency. And that shows up in business and in personal. And, people are better for it, I think, for knowing you. So that's awesome. How do you unwind? Like, it sounds like you do a little dancing. It sounds like, music and dancing kind of go together, but, you're very busy and you're consulting and you're sharing wisdom with other businesses and helping people on their journey. How do you find time with juggling this? I think it's kind of back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, to how do you lead a family and lead in business, but yet take time for you? How do you avoid burnout?
So this kind of hit me upside the head in the last couple of years, which is I was getting burnt out. I was so burnt out and I was tired and I was coming out of shock and all these things. And as I'm researching it and learning about women and perimenopause and how my age now and going through that drama and oh, look, now I have gray hair. And I'm like, I'm tired. And so there's little things I do. Like I love nothing more than when I'm traveling and someone's like, Erin's disappeared to her hotel room. It's because I'm watching Law and Order SVU over and over and over, and laying in bed comatose. But I am an extrovert, and people fuel me. So other people, I said to my therapist one day, I go, people always go, "How do you unwind? Do you read a book?" No, that doesn't fulfill me. That doesn't bring me joy or inner peace. That actually feels like homework. No, fulfilling to me is actually helping someone else. And so we found different things where, like, okay, when we go to church, I love sitting in church and listening to my son sing the hymns next to me. I love, and like if I take little glimmers of that, that to me is unwinding, even though I'm doing something, which is not what I thought unwinding or relaxing was supposed to look like. Don't get me wrong, I still like a nice lounge chair in Cancun on the beach with a cocktail, but finding those little moments. And so dance is one of them, even though it's hard and challenging and um, but it's fun. Making jokes and just having fun with what I choose to do and how I do it is little glimmers of that unwinding. And then spending time with the kids, but in a way that's like joyful and relaxing. And as they get a little bit older, it's a little bit easier than when they're little and needed constant. They still need constant attention, but it's different. So there are pieces that aren't your traditional unwinding or relaxing, or when people go, oh, I drink wine and read a book. No, not my jam. But if someone's like, let's go to, last year I went to New Kids on the Block because I was like, there's nothing better than dancing in an audience with all women in their 40s who all are just reminiscing, yes, about being in second grade and dancing to them. So those things are fun for me, even though it's doing something, it's still unwinding.
I love that. Yeah, my wife went to the New Kids on the Block show too, and confession time. I mean, I was a big New Kids fan. I mean, who wasn't back in that? I graduated from high school in 1994, and I mean, they were the rage back then. New Kids, and then to see them on stage, and some of them have guts. That's really encouraging. I like seeing dad bods.
But
Let's
not
represent.
Donnie. Donnie doesn't have a gut. That he is hysterical. And you're kind of like, it's funny to be this age and like swooning over someone who's older than you, but you're like, oh, yeah, yay. Because you remember what it was like when they were teenagers.
Right, that's right. Yeah, Donnie's got a great personal trainer and a chef, I'm sure. So I kind of get. I think I know the answers because I think you've woven this answer already into much of what you've said, Erin. But what is your why? What drives you?
um, Lifting others up, having fun while doing it, caring about other people, building cool shit, right? Like I get to my job, I'm not a rocket scientist. I literally get to create cool ideas, right? When I worked at Museum of Ice Cream, people would say, is your job challenging? I was like, I don't sell ice cream. I sell joy. I sell happiness. And it turns out everybody wants that. Everybody's buying that. And so, helping those around me be better, doing as much as I can to invest into others. And so, like you said, what Kim said, the giving deposits, I just have to remember to sometimes take a withdrawal is my Achilles heel. But otherwise, I really love seeing other people glow, um, and then having fun.
And I see the authenticity in everything and hear that in everything you've said today. And how does someone get in touch with you? Shameless plug time for your business. I know there's a lot of businesses out there that could use marketing consulting. The landscape in the marketing world is changing rapidly with AI and guest expectations and things that were really trendy even 5 years ago are kind of stagnant and old now. How does somebody engage with you if they want to chat with you to see if maybe there's a fit if you could help them?
Yeah. So you can find me on just about any platform. If you want to see videos of every TikTok dance my daughter has forced me to do, you can find me on TikTok. But LinkedIn, Erin Levzow at Gmail, very simple. But there, any platform you'll find me on. And I would love to chat. And even if you just want to reach out and connect, I love meeting new people.
Erin, thank you so much for being on the Quick Bite podcast. What a fantastic time we've had together. Thank you again for sharing such a powerful story. I think it's going to touch a lot of people. And just blessings to you in 2025. Keep doing this great work that you're doing, and all the best to you.
Thank you.